TJ McConnell, he's a good guy. He's also not been noticed at all within all the hoopla that's going on with the 76ers right now, and I feel like a 75-year-old after using the word hoopla, but his ability as a playmaker is actually pretty damn decent, as he's had some double-digit assist games this season, on top of being a capable inside scorer, and his defense is really solid as well, and he is the first underrated player that we're going to be talking about today when we're looking at the most underrated player on each NBA team. And next we're going to look at Tony Snell of the Milwaukee Bucks, who was kind of just traded on a whim to the Bucks this season, and he was always a nice defensive player, but his three-point shot has been coming around this year as well, so he's actually shooting well from the field. For the Chicago Bulls, Robin Lopez, who I've always liked as a defensive player, as well as a capable offensive one, someone who knows where to be in terms of both sides of the floor. And for the Cleveland Cavaliers, DeAndre Liggins, whose defense has been really a nice piece for them, having one guy who doesn't really need to focus on offense too much. All he has to do is defend the perimeter well. That being said, his offense, when called upon, has been at least good enough. He is not just a liability on that side of the floor. For the Boston Celtics, Jonas Jerebko. The Celtics are just simply better when he's in the game, even if he only averages like 5 points, just because of his shooting. For the Los Angeles Clippers, Luke Richard Mbah-a-Moute, potentially the longest name in the NBA, although Giannis Antetokounmpo might have him beat, now that I think about it. The Clippers have always needed a two-way small forward, and given the jumps in his offensive game, maybe he's that guy for them. For the Memphis Grizzlies, JaMychal Green, as the Grizz were always looking for some more athleticism, as well as just a guy who can really welcome them into the new age of the NBA with shooting and playing small, and JaMychal has been able to do that. And he's also given Zebo some nice rest off the bench. For the Atlanta Hawks, still one of the better defensive wings in the NBA, Thabo Sefolosha, a guy who I would really love to see on a contending team. I would love for my Celtics to acquire him for a playoff run. And then offensively, he knows what he's doing. And then James Johnson of Miami is another guy who I would also love to see on a team looking to really win right now, even if Miami can't lose at the moment, because he was always one of the toughest guys in the NBA who didn't have much of an offensive game, but that has changed this season. Now, I've talked about Cody Zeller of the Charlotte Hornets before, but defense matters, man. When he's in the game, the Hornets are like a plus 100 on the season or something, and when he's out of the game, they're like minus 100. He makes quite an impact for the Hornets. For the Utah Jazz, I believe it's Joe Ingles, but it might be Joe Ingles. He hits threes, and he also grabs like 2 assists and 2 rebounds a game off the bench, even if he does not look like an NBA player whatsoever. For the Sacramento Kings, Anthony Tolliver, a power forward who shoots above league average from 3. Unfortunately, he doesn't do too much else besides shooting, but for that one ability, he is a nice offensive player. Justin Holiday of the New York Knicks, he shoots around 35% from 3, and he can play some defense. Tarik Black for the Lakers. This guy grabs like 25 rebounds a game, even though he only plays like 15 minutes. Can my Celtics have him, please? Jody Meeks of the Orlando Magic is next, and he's always been a really good three-point shooter. Unfortunately, he's just been injured the past couple of years. Now, for the Dallas Mavericks, this one has to go to Seth Curry. I think he's found the right team and the right head coach with Rick Carlisle, and I do look forward to his scoring off the bench. For the Brooklyn Nets, Jeremy Lin and his weird hair. Lin's a pretty decent point guard. He averages about 14 and 5, 14 and 6, and he just kind of knows what he's doing. For the Denver Nuggets, we have Darrell Arthur, who Nate Duncan loves on Twitter. He shoots over 50% from 3 at the power forward position, and he's also not bad on defense either. Another guy who I would love to see on a winning team. Now, I've mentioned Glenn Robinson III before from the Pacers. Similar to a guy like Justin Holiday, he's a good defensive player, and he knows what he's doing on offense enough to be like a fifth wheel and be pretty decent at it. Now for the New Orleans Pelicans, Dante Cunningham. You can play at the 3, you can play at the 4, he's got some nice athleticism, pretty damn good defensively, but then his offensive game has also stepped up a bit more this season. For the Detroit Pistons, we have John Lure. He shoots like 80% in the paint, which is a little ridiculous, and he's also a capable mid-range shooter. I do wish his three-pointers were a bit better though. Gotta go Cory Joseph on the Toronto Raptors. I would love to see Cory Joseph starting somewhere. I guarantee he could be like a mid-tier point guard in the NBA. But as of right now, he's just an awesome backup for the Raptors. The lineup with him and Kyle Lowry together, I mean, they're just killing teams with those two in the game. Now for the Houston Rockets, Sam Dekker, who has been a nice extra piece for Mike D'Antoni's system as a three-point shooter, a guy who can run the fast break pretty well. He's also got some good size. I think he could be a defensive player. Speaking of defensive players, Dewayne Dedmon of the Spurs, who I have talked about before. Basically everything that Pau Gasol is not, and I'm pretty sure you're not surprised that I found a way to diss Pau Gasol in this. Now a player that I'm not going to diss is PJ Tucker. That was a really corny segue. He's really good at defense, and I think he's like one of the 6 guys in the NBA who could actually defend LeBron James at least a little bit. And offensively, he's at least okay enough. Now, Jeremy Grant has been a big surprise for the OKC Thunder. They traded for him expecting an athlete as well as a defensive player, and they got that, but he also has learned how to shoot this season. I'm sure Russell Westbrook is part of that. A nice future for him. Tyus Jones also seems to have a nice future for the T-Wolves. Even if he hasn't been able to get too many minutes, he seems like a decently polished offensive player who's about to be a restricted free agent or something. Now for the Blazers, I have to go with Ed Davis, who, similar to Tarik Black, has been a very good rebounder, as well as okay enough defensive player, even in limited minutes. Another guy who I would really love for my Celtics to acquire to get some rebounds. For the Golden State Warriors, Ian Clark, who I believe is on a 1-year deal and is probably going to get a decent payday this offseason, because the dude can flat out shoot. And finally, for the Washington Wizards, Kelly Oubre, who's been a huge energy piece for them as an athlete and a pretty good two-way player. He's been making his three-pointers this year, and he just looks like he belongs as opposed to his rookie season.